how do we take all of this knowledge and awareness and even unconscious patterning, and how do we take it into the barns, into our horses and how we interact with them, into our riding and how we sit on the horses, and into even just how we think about ourselves and relate to ourselves?
What historically kind of we have taught or what we have learned to do to address these kind of postural chronic tension issues is we have come up with a bunch of different ways to teach better performance posture, to strengthen the performance posture muscles so that you can counteract your habitually tight muscles, to strengthen the muscles on your back, help you sit up straight, or when you're riding to help you open your chest, look where you're going and lengthen your leg, right? Those are the muscles that you want to train so you can sit better on a horse. So what we've done, what we do, what most of us do, what I used to do is we're trying to strengthen or train the compensation for our habitual posture. And that's what we're doing with our horses too. When you have a horse who prefers to circle to the left, you train him longer and harder to the right to try to fix that, right? To try to ride the crookedness out of the horse, or train for straightness, or help them kind of improve their movement, or help them expand their range of motion, those kind of things. And what I'm suggesting, what I feel like I've discovered, not that this is my work, but when I discovered Hanna Somatics, it's a totally different way of approaching this issue. And this issue, in my opinion, is kind of most of the issues that we have with horses and with being able to ride well. This issue of not being in perfect balance, of being a little crooked, of not having great body awareness, of having a restricted range of motion. We're going to go about it. What I'm suggesting, what I do, and what I would love for everyone else to know how to do is that we don't have to train and compensate for it. We can actually go deeper, or I like to say go upstream in the nervous system to the part of the brain that's actually controlling those habituated postural patterns and that muscle tension that's associated with that. And we can unwind it there. So instead of trying to fix the body or balance the body itself, we can unwind the habituated tension where it's stored and where it comes from in the brain. And the reason most people don't do that or don't know how to do that is because to do it, the key to it is pandiculation. And that's new. It's new enough that people don't know about it yet, or the masses don't know about it yet. And that's what I feel like is my job, and your job too, is to share this amazing discovery with the masses, with the horse industry, because that's the industry we're in. But my hope is it's going to spill over into all other industries, because we all have bodies. We all experience an accumulation of chronic unconscious tension through our lives. And now we know how to reverse it, how to fix it. And it's not something that someone invented. It's not something you do to a body. It's not like a treatment or a therapy. The reason it works so well is it's a reflex that's already pre-programmed inside our nervous system. It's amazing. Our brain, our nervous system, same with the horse's brain and nervous system, are so amazingly designed, right? Like whoever designed it, whether that's happenstance and evolution or whatever, I don't care. The point is, it's an amazing system, right? The brain is the most incredible supercomputer in existence, and we are just beginning to understand little pieces of it. The brain is kind of the main part of the central nervous system. It's the computer that runs the whole thing. People are trying to hack it. Like we're trying to hack it. Most of the hacks are coming in from the body end. And I feel like what we've discovered with this method of applying or triggering pandiculation is we've discovered how to get it to reset from within, from the top instead of from the bottom. Instead of doing everything else that we've been taught to do when you go out to the barn or when you're trying to get your body to do what your instructor is telling you to do when you ride, I think everyone should kind of just step back, do some Hanna Somatics with your own body, try Equine Hanna Somatics with your horse, which Hanna Somatics is basically systematically triggering pandiculation in various muscle groups to reset as much of the body as possible back to a neutral baseline tension level so that it can do all of the amazing things that it's designed to do. And if we do that, everything else that we're trying to do with horses, with our own body, is easier, is possible, and it doesn't hurt anymore.
That's amazing. Tell us what you're doing with your system of feeling embodied, your Feel-Embodied system.
So before I came across Hanna Somatic, I didn't know that it existed. I was working as a trainer and a riding instructor and a bunch of other things that most of us become when we're into horses, right? Like I had to learn how to do hoof trimming because I wanted my horses to be barefoot, but there wasn't anyone around where I lived to do it. So I learned how to do that. I learned how to change how my horses are living and eating to help them, function and be healthy so that we didn't have to deal with as many health issues, and had somehow acquired several horses that were in various stages of rehabilitation, right? Like, because most of our horses are not sound. Actually, statistically, 80% of domestic horses are not sound. So most of us, barns you walk into are full of clinically lame horses who we are all trying to help because we all want them to feel great because we love them. That's really why we're doing horses, right? Is we love horses. We want them to feel amazing. We hope they love us back too. And then we want to do all these other things. But so much of what we're doing is trying to get the horses sound enough to do the fun stuff, or sound enough to just live out their life happily instead of being unhappy or disconnected or crabby or whatever is happening with the horses. But anyway, so I had a couple of horses who needed to be rehabilitated. And that's partly why I was trying to learn everything I could to do that. And that's kind of how I was first introduced to Equine Hanna Somatics. Is I met one of the, at that time, very few people who'd gone through the training program. She did a session with one of my horses, the one who I had a really challenging experience trying to help him rehabilitate and get sound. He had navicular, he was crooked, he just never really looked great or felt as great as I thought he should, until we did Equine Hanna Somatics. And she did this session with him, and he just looked like $1,000,000. All his parts kind of matched and flowed together. And the effect didn't wear off after that one session for like weeks and months afterwards. And that's maybe a whole other conversation, but that was what got me hooked into this work. And so over the years, the more I've learned about the nervous system and muscle tension and all the things that happen in a horse's body when they're experiencing a higher than normal baseline muscle tension level, it changed the way I do everything with horses. It changed the way I teach riders. It changed the way I try to help horses through their issues, because now I could see in their body where the issue was. And instead of trying to train them through it, I could help them in a different way that I was finding was much faster and more effective and longer lasting, which is the result of Equine Hanna Somatics. And then as I became certified and started working with more clients and kind of shifting toward doing that kind of work with horses instead of the training stuff, what I noticed as I started working with horses in different states. I was living in Hawaii at this time, but I would come to the mainland and work with horses. And then I started traveling to Europe and Canada and working with all kinds of horses in different disciplines. And I noticed that different disciplines or kind of training methods resulted in horses that had particular postural patterns and particular kind of common reoccurring themes in where they were accumulating this chronic muscle tension. And I started to realize that it wasn't just normal everyday life being a horse that was creating these patterns. Some of it is kind of normal that happens to all horses or all people, just the things that we do, like sitting in chairs or living in pastures, they create tension in our bodies. But if there were particular sports or particular training techniques that were resulting in these particular postures, I had this aha moment. Well, if I could change the way people are training, change the way they're handling the horses so that we're not creating these tension patterns in the first place, then they wouldn't need me as much to come in and fix them. Like, I'm happy to do that. I'm glad I know how, but I would rather that we could shift the way people are like applying pressure and using training techniques to the horses, that the horse's response is to accumulate tension from. For us, had to start with me. So I had to change the way that I used pressure and release, for example, with horses. I had to change because I could see where that was creating brace. And when you create brace, that's muscle tension. And when you do that over and over, even if the end result is a softening, you're still having the horse practice the tension first. Now I know that if they practice brace, soften, brace, soften, brace, soften, they're going to habituate the brace, and that's going to result in chronic tension. Even if we train them to be soft, they will still carry the chronic tension in those muscles from the training process. And they can't feel it anymore once they habituate. So they want to soften. They've been trained to, whether that's to a rein or to an aid or to a thought, but they can only soften as far as their muscle will allow. and their muscle will only soften as far as the brain will allow it. And the brain will only soften it as far as that baseline habituated tension level that it has normalized.
Wow, that's fascinating. So what were some of the changes that you started making as you would handle these horses or interact with these horses? Because it sounds like the key to all of this is really taking out that brace component.
We probably can't take it out completely because it happens, but we can change the way that we approach horses or the way that we approach our training to minimize that bracing as much as possible. And that is, you're right on the money there. That is one of the major ways that I've changed things, is to try to reduce the amount of brace in how I do it. So for example, and I'll give specific examples that you guys who are listening can actually try with your horses without changing a whole lot. One of them is I don't use steady, sustained pressure in my training. Obviously, we have to teach our horses to give to pressure or to move away from pressure so that we can move them around and kind of have a nonverbal conversation with them. But I'm not going to put pressure on and hold it until the horse responds. If I put pressure on and they don't respond right away, I'm pushing on them and they're bracing or pushing back against me. And the way we do that is by muscle tension. So like even just something gentle, if we were together, I would just put my hand up and have you put your hand up like in a high five, and we both just gently press on each other lightly. And notice, and you guys can do this too, notice that when you gently press on something, you could push on a wall or a chair, your whole back activates. The muscles contract a little bit to stabilize you. And that's a good thing. But if you do that over and over, you're going to habituate to holding extra stabilization in your back. And the result of that is stiffness. You have a stiff back now, and you've taught yourself to do that by bracing it over and over. So how can we apply pressure? Because you have to sometimes to give a horse a cue or give them physical information, right? But without creating enough repetition of the brace to create a pattern of stiffness. And the simple way not to do it is to just not do it. So you can put pressure on a horse, but you've got to release it before it becomes a sustained brace. So then that means we can't use a lot of very common training techniques that tell us to put the pressure on and hold it till your horse gives, or till the horse softens, or till the horse tries something. And there's this pretty embedded industry-wide thing that trainers say that's kind of become a belief for a lot of us, that if you release at the wrong moment, right? As we put pressure on a horse, and if you release too soon or you release on the wrong thing, you're training the horse the wrong thing, or you're letting the horse win, or you're not, being the kind of leader that's clear for your horse or something. And I found that that's actually not necessarily true. There's totally a way to not use sustained pressure, or to ask and then release before a horse gives you the right answer. I'm doing air quotes, and still achieve understanding and a clear communication. And it's just a different way of applying pressure. And it's using something called a reset that is just spectacular. And that I learned from Amy Brimholm-McCord, who is a pretty fantastic horse trainer and one of my favorites. And the reset is a moment after you apply pressure and ask your horse or apply your aids, and you just come back to neutral. So you ask and then you stop asking. Instead of asking and holding until something happens, you ask and then you reset back to neutral or to wherever you were. And if the horse doesn't do it or doesn't get it, you can ask again. And this gives us the opportunity to start really light and keep coming back to being really light, instead of start light, but then spend most of our time in the heavy, strong phase of the aids. Especially at the beginning when you're trying to teach something new, if you're using that hold the pressure until the horse gives the right answer, you spend a lot of time holding pressure, and we don't have to. It works just as well, if not better, to use pressure reset. And then it also opens up time and space to have a conversation that's two-way with a horse. Because if you put pressure on and keep it on, the horse doesn't have an opportunity to speak or to answer you. So it's a different way of structuring the conversation with a horse.
How has your work with Hanna Somatics, somatics in general, changed how you listen to horses?
I think what it has done is it has opened me up to being able to listen on a whole new level of subtlety that I would describe as like the nervous system level. It's really interesting. This part of the brain that we're working with when we do Hanna Somatics, and I always say Hanna Somatics, not somatics anymore, because everybody is stealing that word somatics and using it for all kinds of stuff. This part of the brain that we're working with when we do pandiculation, it's the voluntary motor cortex. It's the part of the brain. What it does is moving, sensing, and feeling. So by accident, or what goes along with doing the pandiculation and the Hanna Somatics work with horses or with our own body, and this is where it comes from to answer your question here, is we're stimulating the part of our brain where feel lives. And if you know anything about the brain or neuroplasticity, you know that when you use something in your brain, if you use a brain cell, it immediately responds by growing. So it gets better. It stimulates that part of your brain to grow. So by doing Hanna Somatics, we are literally stimulating the feel center of our brain to grow and to make more connection and to be kind of more accessible. And we're doing that with our horses too. So the result of that is we are literally able to feel more. We are literally, through our own nervous system, able to listen on a whole new level to a horse's body, nervous system, energy, call it what you want. We are all equipped to feel that already. Like we're born with this ability to feel and sense what most people would call energy or thoughts or intention. But since we don't use that part of our brain very much, most people don't have much feel or have a sense that they have it. And our horses also, the stiffer they are, the less they're using that part of their brain. So the less they're able to kind of use their energy or be in their energy, in their body as well as they can be. Doing Hanna Somatics with my own body and doing it with the horses is an incredibly powerful way to unlock our ability to connect with them and to feel and listen and converse with them on a really subtle level that until now was kind of inaccessible to most of us normal horse people. If we're not one of those born horse whisperers or the ones who are just born talented or born speaking horse, I think those people are the ones who just have more access to this part of their brain and it's more active in their daily life. And so I think what we're discovering here is that we've discovered like the key to growing feel. And it doesn't take a lifetime to acquire. It's not something you learn from somebody else. It's already embedded in your own nervous system. You just have to activate it. And I think Hanna Somatics is how we do that.
Incredible. For those listeners who would like to get in touch with you and to go even deeper into this subject, the best place to get in touch with you is via your website. And that's alissamayer.com. And I'll spell it out. It's ALISSAMAYER.com. And then also to go to the Equine Hanna Somatic org site. So that would be equinehannasomatics.org, EquineHannasomatics.org.
Yeah. So that's where you should go if you want to learn how to do Equine Hanna Somatics with your horse. And we have a full body instructional video that you can purchase and download. And there's also a free guide that'll teach you a few exercises that you can just grab, download, and take straight out to the barn to do with your horse and start to get these amazing results and grow your feel with your horses.
Amazing. And for more information about our host, Meredith Crawford, visit thelab.horse. Thanks for listening.